Hi everybody and welcome back to the KK Zone. As always, I am Kara Kaufman, your host in all things Yankee baseball. And it's been a couple days and more spring training has happened. That's it, that's the update. Just kidding, you're not gonna get away that easily. There is definitely more to talk about than that. Today, we are going to look at the Yankees' possibilities for the bullpen. And that, I'm not gonna lie to you, it's a lot of dudes, so I'm going to actually lightning round it. We're gonna go really quick through a bunch of possibilities. But before I do that, I did want to talk about my favorite non-Yankees thing this week. I know I've already mentioned Ichiro Suzuki, but that guy's incredible and just continues to do things that endear him to me even further, as if that was even possible. We talked about already how he built a mound in his home in Japan so he could throw better batting practice, which is unbelievable. But a step further, not only is Ichiro ready to pitch, he is still hitting. And that's one thing he always did in his career was hit, and more hit. Well, it turns out the guy's still got it. He was in a sim game with the Mariners this spring. He's a coach there, or one of those special assistant types. So he's always around helping the kids learn. But he actually stepped into the box against one of their pitching prospects the other day, and it looked just like Ichiro. I mean, the guy is in impeccable shape, unbelievable. And he had that signature batting stance where he holds the bat out in front of him as though it is a laser beam of focus and the most precious thing in the world. And then he puts it on his shoulder and there he goes. He actually did end up getting a hit, but that was actually even better because he walked back to the dugout and he was mad. You could see he was frustrated. He said to his teammates as he walked by, to his coach, maybe it would have been a sac fly, which is awesome. Ichiro Suzuki, retired all-time great baseball player, taking an at-bat in a sim game. Not even a spring training game that counts for nothing, literally a sim game, which there weren't even fans there for. It wasn't even a real game. And he is still frustrated because he couldn't get a hit. That is the Ichiro we know and love, and we love him more every single day. The only other topic before we get to the bullpen is attendance, having fans in attendance for baseball games. This is unquestionably a great thing. We are so excited to have people back in stadiums. Even in spring training, it's been so great to hear crowd noise. That being said, guys, there's still a pandemic happening, and I mean, some stadiums have plans. The Yankees have announced probably 10% capacity, but we'll see where they are in the 3 weeks. Oh my god, it's only 3 weeks till opening day. I just realized how close it is. I'm so excited. But anyway, we'll see where things are in 3 weeks. The Knicks are increasing their capacity a bit, the Nets too, so we'll see what the Yankees end up doing. I personally am hoping they keep it low enough that they can keep it incredibly safe with distancing, require masks, all that good stuff to prevent the spread of COVID while still allowing some fans in the stadiums. Now, cut away to Texas, where the governor has abandoned the mask mandate, basically saying we don't care about COVID anymore, good luck. And sure enough, the Texas Rangers announced today that they will be allowing a full capacity for their April 5th home opener. I'm not even sure I have words. It's pretty shocking and frankly terrifying. So if you're going to a ball game in Texas, my goodness, please be careful. But my favorite thing about this otherwise very unsettling story is Susan Waldman, the Yankees radio announcer. They were discussing this today and her response to that was, I'm glad I'm not there. I am glad I am not there. Stupid. Amen, Susan. As always, she speaks truth. We appreciate her, and that is my sentiment exactly. Stay safe out there, guys. But now for some actual Yankees content, we're going to talk about the bullpen. This is always one of the hardest races to parse in spring training because, first of all, it's a whole bundle of guys. You're going to have probably 8 bullpen spots up for grabs, assuming that we have a 4-man bench for at least the beginning of the year. And the thing about this, too, is that, of course, we can decide which 8 guys we think are going to go north of the team, but there are probably going to be an additional 10 guys at least that cycle in and out throughout the course of the season. So really, anyone mentioned here is fair game to come up at some point, even if they aren't with the team come April 1st. That being said, I'm going to go through first the guys that we are pretty certain will definitely be in that bullpen. So any conversation about the bullpen begins with the closer, and for the Yankees, that is not a question. It is Aroldis Chapman, the flame-throwing lefty. He's been super great for the Yankees, and whatever we might think about the circumstances which allowed the Yankees to obtain him on the cheap a couple years ago, and I personally feel not great about them, he has been a really valuable player on the field for the Yanks. There was some concern that as he aged and lost his velocity, he'd be less effective. And sure, the guy who once threw the fastest pitch on record now is not throwing 103 anymore. He's throwing more like 99, 100, which, mind you, that is still fast. And please, I don't want to be anywhere near a 99 mile an hour pitch near my head. No thanks, I'm out. But he has managed to not only be very effective with that still blazing fastball, his slider has improved substantially, so now it is an effective out pitch, but even cooler about Chapman is he now has a split finger fastball. This is something he used to have back in the day, abandoned when he didn't need it. To be a closer, your blazing fastball and a slider to keep him honest usually will do the trick. But this splitter, he broke out again last year. He used it in the playoffs. I think he got 2 strikeouts off of it. It is very effective, particularly if you have to be all ready to go for 100 mile an hour heat and the splitter comes in, you'll get some really foolish looking swings. So Chapman pitched tonight in the game the Yankees just won against the Pirates, and he looked sharp. I'm going to caveat everything I'm going to say about that game with the Pirates are terrible. I'm sorry, Pittsburgh fans. They're not good. This wasn't even their A lineup, and their A lineup isn't actually good, so everything with a grain of salt here. That being said, it was Chapman's first outing of the spring, and there was no speed gun on the Yes Network that I could tell, but the fastball looked plenty effective, and he broke out the splitter, and it looked great. So Chapman being sharp in his first outing is kind of surprising, and frankly, I will take it. But we're looking forward to seeing him in the closer role, especially with that new splitter, see how he can stay effective as his velocity maybe creeps down over the years to come. Next man on the high leverage totem pole is Zach Britton, another lefty, and one of the most effective relievers in baseball over the past several years. Remember him beating us with the Orioles and beating other guys for us, now in pinstripes. And oh, I'm sorry, wait, I think I'm hearing sad trombone. Oh no, guys, the whiteboard of doom strikes again. Well, it was nice when we had that days since last workplace injury number ticking up, but now we're back down to 1. The good news is Aaron Boone's recovered. The bad news is, Zach Britton. Sorry, man. He's going to have surgery on that bone chip in his left elbow, aka his pitching elbow. We expect him out about 2 to 3 months, and it's not ideal. So yeah, as you can see from that, the Yankees are definitely going to start the year without Zach Britton. The good news is it's not Tommy John surgery, so provided there are no major setbacks, he should be back, hopefully in June-ish, and that is good news for the Yanks. He'll be able to ramp back up as soon as his incision heals, so frankly this is a way less bad outcome than I first expected when I heard that he was getting an MRI on his pitching elbow. That's always, but thankfully, of all the outcomes that could result from that, other than it being a false alarm, this is kind of the best one. So the bad news is the Yankees won't have Britton for the first couple months of the season. They'll likely put him on the 60-day IL as soon as they require a roster spot for somebody else. But the good news is they will hopefully eventually have him, and he will be their main setup guy, because dude's been great. We're going to miss that bowling ball sinker that is a ground ball inducing machine. But we'll know that it'll be in the Bronx before too long. And in the meantime, as Aaron Boone said today, always optimistic, it gives other guys a chance to really carve out their role in the time before Britton comes back. Number 3 on my bullpen depth chart is Chad Green. I love Chad Green. Guy came out of nowhere. Cashman made a trade that was Justin Wilson, who was a very effective lefty for the Yankees, to the Tigers and got back Luis Sessa, who we'll talk about in a few minutes, and Chad Green. I hadn't heard of either of them, and you know what? They both carved out niches for themselves with the Yankees, especially Green. He is a reliever through and through because his only really good pitch is his fastball, but it is great. For some reason, he throws it pretty hard, but for some reason it's even more deceptive than you would think. Guys around hits 97 or so, which is fast, but not the fastest in the big leagues. But even with that, guys just miss it a lot, which means there's some good spin rate going on there, some good deception, all the good stuff. So we love Chad Green. We're excited that he's back in a high leverage role. He too pitched his first spring outing tonight against the Pirates, and he too looked great. In fact, he struck out the side. That's good. Even against a bad team, that is good. It means your pitches are working. And the other thing about Chad Green that's always hilarious is this guy shows no emotion. I know we've got a guy called The Machine. Now I've got a guy called Clubot, but Chad Green just it's like he doesn't have any gear above neutral. And obviously the guy's very competitive. He's a professional athlete, but you would never know by looking at his face. Just even-keeled Chad Green. He's out to get you, though. He will strike you out. And I can't wait to see him do more of that in the bullpen this season. Next up is the guy the Yankees traded to get Chad Green, and that's Justin Wilson. Guys, he's back. He was the Mets last year, and the Yankees signed him as a free agent now. You'll note that I've now described 4 relievers, and 3 of them are lefties, so that's cool. Wilson, we're hoping, can regain some effectiveness. He wasn't as great the past couple years as he was with the Tigers before that, and the Yankees before that, for that matter. But he gives a different look out of the bullpen. I will say tonight against the Pirates, he got absolutely lit up, but it's a spring training game, so just like we can't infer too much about how good Chapman looks from striking out some hapless Pirates hitters, we can't infer too much about how bad Justin Wilson looks because he gave up a grand slam. Yeah, Yankees won that game 6-5, and all 5 runs were in Justin Wilson's inning, which in general I'm happy about because it says good things about how everyone else is looking, but rough day at the office for Justin. He'll find it though, and it'll be interesting to see what he can bring. And now that Britton's out, I assume that means he'll be bumped up in the pecking order, so more high leverage innings for Wilson likely in the offing. The 5th bullpen lock, as far as I can tell, is Darren ODay. We've already touched on him a little bit. He's a righty with a very funky sidearm delivery, which was annoying to watch him use against us when he was with the Orioles, but now should be fun to watch him baffle hitters with in pinstripes. He too pitched tonight. He looked pretty darn good, and that is great to see. He's one of those guys that gives opponents a different look. There was a lot made last year of the Tampa Bay Rays bullpen, which was excellent, not just because they had a lot of guys with really good stuff, but because they specifically had a lot of guys who gave you a different look. They had this graphic on MLB.com that had the arm angles of all the relievers. It looked like the hands of a clock. It was kind of crazy, and if you're a hitter, you can imagine seeing a different release point every at-bat makes it very difficult to really get a handle on what you're seeing come to the plate. Advantage pitcher. So Darren ODay coming to the Yankees gives them that very different look, which hopefully will be a good way to mix it up between all their hard throwers. So Darren ODay should be fun. As I alluded to in an earlier episode, he gives a good interview, seems like a pretty down-to-earth guy who I think will be a cool addition to the clubhouse mix in addition to being great in the bullpen. And that's Darren ODay. He'll be in the bullpen too. Number 6 out of 8 is Luis Cessa. Cessa also came over with Chad Green in that Justin Wilson deal, and he has been kind of back and forth between starting and relieving. He was a starter. Now he's more of a long man type in the bullpen, and he's fine in that role. He's had some great moments and some rough ones. He's looked not great this spring so far, but it's still early. But the main reason I'm pretty convinced he will make the team is that Luis Cessa is out of options, so he can't be one of those guys that goes back and forth from the minors to the majors. He's going to have to stay with the major league team, or he'll have to pass through waivers, and most likely some other team would claim him in that scenario. So the Yankees want to keep all the talent they can, so as long as he remains able to get outs, I would expect Luis Cessa to mostly stay on the roster, unless there's a major dip in performance, or unless something happens where they have a chance to make a massive upgrade there, and he is a casualty of that. But in any event, Luis Cessa, a lot of fun. Seems like he's gets along with the guys really well. A lot of Mexican pride. We enjoy him, and hopefully he can really step it up, and there are going to be a lot of innings to fill this year, especially early, as starting pitchers ramp up more slowly after a diminished workload last season. So the long relievers become pretty important, and Cessa is a guy who can give you 2-3 innings, and that will be really important, so hopefully he can make those 2 or 3 effective innings and really ease the load off the rest of the staff. And the last guy that I feel fairly confident will make it is Jonathan Loaisiga. Loaisiga is great, personal favorite, filthy stuff. Dude throws really, really hard and also has some nasty breaking pitches. The guy has a potential to be absolutely lights out as a short inning reliever. He really was a starter, and the Yankees were trying to do that to keep him there because he's obviously more valuable the more you can use him, and starters have the biggest workload of any pitchers, but it's tough. He didn't ever seem to make it deep into games. He has an injury history, which doesn't help, but also he had trouble being efficient, so he was rarely making it out of the fifth inning, and you want a guy that at least sometimes can give you a longer outing if you're going to have a starter. And as with most guys, when you put him in a shorter burst, his stuff really plays up. So the fastball is 99 instead of 96, and that does make a difference. So I think the idea for Loaisiga is he could be a really deadly 1 or 2 inning reliever for the Yankees. He has yet to kind of settle into that role and really find consistent success, but I think that he certainly has a shot to do it. I think the Yankees would love to see him do it, and I would wager he'll have the opportunity to do it. I think he'll make the team out of spring training. So So there you have 7 guys already for those 8 potential bullpen spots. And, we assume there will be 8. It's going to go back and forth. There'll be an extra position player sometimes, an extra pitcher sometimes. But in general, we'll say probably there are going to be 8 guys going north in the bullpen, and we've already just named 7. So I'm going to speed through a couple of categories here of other guys that could be either a fit for that 8th spot now or later on in the season. And the first category is guys that we know or veterans who've come in on a minor league contract who could just be a nice stable piece to be that last guy in the bullpen. And the first one of those is, I've talked about him several times, and it's Lucas Luetge. And when Zach Britton went down with an injury, that was the guy that everyone sort of turned to. Another lefty who's been really effective in spring training with crazy strikeout numbers and high spin rate. That could be a cool replacement for the really valuable guy who just got hurt. And, we can't infer too much from 3 spring training outings, but so far he's looked real good. So I suspect there's going to be a higher level of scrutiny on him going forward, and he could potentially break camp as another guy in that bullpen. Another guy is a guy that I already mentioned in the conversation about possible starters, and that's Nicknelson. Nicknelson, as I said before, is a starter, but he was with the Yankees in a bullpen role last year. He's looked pretty sharp in spring training so far, and we know the Yankees are high on him in general. So I'm not thinking he's likely to be the 5th starter, and if he's not, he certainly might go to AAA and either start or relieve, but there's certainly a shot, especially if he really looks sharp later on in spring training, he could be one of those guys to cycle in and out, and he could even start the year with that 8th bullpen spot in mind, because, again, he's someone who can give you some length, because he's worked a starter's workload in the past. So Nicknelson, definitely got to watch. Another guy who's an actual Yankees prospect who has a shot is Albert Abreu. Now, originally we thought that it was a pretty definite thing he would make the bullpen because he, like Luis Cessa, was out of options. But as it turns out, with some fancy 2020 reduced season math, maybe not. Hasn't been definitively announced yet, but all signs point to he's going to have an extra option year, which to me means all signs point to he'll probably start the year in AAA, and maybe we'll see him at some point. He's got great potential, but certainly there's more work to be done there, so wouldn't hurt to see him start the year in AAA. But also, I would not be surprised at all to see him in the bullpen at some point in 2021. All right, this is a fun one. Nestor Cortes Jr. This is his second stint with the Yankees. He was here previously, then went to Seattle. Now he's back. Okay, guys, I love Nasty Nestor. He's a lefty, and he doesn't throw that hard, but what he does do is mix up his delivery as much as anyone I've seen. He'll change his leg kick, he'll change his arm angle, he'll give you a hesitation, he'll give you a quick pitch. You don't get bored with him on the mound. Now, he has to actually be effective for that to be anything more than a fun gimmick, and he certainly was at times during the last time he was in pinstripes. And there were whole chunks of time where he was totally ineffective. So he's not looked great in spring training so far, but if he can kind of pull it together and put a couple good outings together, I wouldn't be surprised to see him either. I'm calling probably not for opening day, but maybe at some point we'll get Nasty Nestor back in the Bronx. And then another personal favorite, Adam Warren. I've already sung the praises of Adam Warren. He's looked pretty sharp considering he hasn't faced major league hitters in quite some time following his Tommy John surgery. Warren is a known quantity. The Yankees trust him a lot. He's a guy who's given them really good innings in the past and clearly has the makeup and caliber to actually succeed on their team. That being said, it's been a while since he's pitched in the majors, so it's going to have to remain to be seen how he comes through spring training and how effective he actually is. But I would not be shocked to see him break camp with the club, and I certainly expect to see him at some point in the Bronx. And you know what? I love him, so I'm glad. And last in this totally possible veteran category, it's Tyler Lyons. He's another lefty. We always know teams need lefties, and he has also pitched for the Yankees in the past. They seem to really like him. There's a couple of guys like him who they'll sign and then kind of shuttle up and down between AAA and the major leagues, and then they'll find to kind of re-sign them to a minor league contract the next year. So Tyler Lyons has proven to be one of those guys. So in that, it's clear they have some affection for him. I think he will probably be seen at some point. Alrighty, and next category is veteran guys in camp who I think probably are not going to make the team. But anything can happen. Injuries can happen. Excellent eye-opening performances can happen. Really, anything, an earthquake could happen and everyone could be dropped into it except for Nick Goody. So Nick Goody's one of those guys. Again, nothing against Nick Goody. He is a perfectly serviceable major league middle reliever. I don't know that the Yankees are super expecting him to jump up high on their depth chart, and there's a couple guys ahead of him I think that they're more excited about the upside of. But if not, you got Nick Goody, and hey, at the very least, he's got a fun name, because if things go well, you can make all kinds of puns with good, goody, good, you know, or I guess if he's has a poor outing, it's just not so goody today. Sorry. Anyway, fun baseball name, and maybe we'll see him at some point, but I'm thinking less likely right away. Also on that list, veteran Luis Garcia. I didn't really know much about him, except that he's gotten lit up so far in spring training, so I'm feeling like probs not on Luis Garcia unless things change drastically. And last but not least, we got Trevor Lane. He actually did pitch tonight and looked pretty good, so maybe I should revise my opinion on that, but my general impression is there are a couple other guys who would be ahead of him in the pecking order. So those are a couple guys who, again, could open eyes with good showings, but if not, they're kind of hovering in no man's land as the bullpen is concerned. Last but not least, category is prospect on the 40-man roster who the Yankees are really excited about, but who I would frankly be surprised to see in the big leagues this season. Not going to say much about them, just going to tell you they're there so you can be quietly excited for when these guys emerge out of their cocoons and become fully formed amazing relievers. So fingers crossed for that happening. But in the meantime, these guys are guys like Luis Gil. He's a guy that you dream on the stuff, but you're not totally sure yet about when that stuff is going to coalesce. Similarly, Luis Medina, who we're all really excited about, but as we saw in his one outing so far this spring, really needs to find that control. Awesome stuff all over the map. Walked a gajillion dudes in that one outing. It was rough. But if he can harness that, and it seemed like he might have turned a corner in winter ball, but if he can harness that again, watch out. Then he can move quick. But for now, I'm saying just give him a little more time in the oven before he's ready to pop out and enjoy the big leagues. And the last two there are Yoendrys Gomez and Brooks Kriske, both of whom, again, the Yankees are high on. They added them all to the 40-man roster to protect them from the Rule 5 draft, where another team can steal your prospects if you've got too many good ones. So the Yankees valued all of them highly enough to make sure they didn't get poached. The question is, when can they contribute? And the answer, I think, is probably maybe next year, but not this year. So I guess we shall see. So that is your bullpen summary. Seems like we got 7 near locks, and then a whole group of guys who are likely candidates, a couple guys who are less likely candidates, and then our prospects who just need more time to develop in the minor leagues. And that is the bullpen conversation for today. That was a lot of guys. The bullpen is just a lot of guys, and you're going to see a lot of guys ride what we call the Scranton Shuttle, and we say that with love, back and forth from AAA Scranton Wilkes-Barre. And so a lot of those guys I mentioned will end up there, even if they're not there in Yankee Stadium on April 1st against the Blue Jays. Again, as I said that, I realized that's coming up so soon, and opening day is the best, so I can't wait for that to be here. So I will leave you with this quote from the living legend, Stephen Sondheim, from whom we'll probably hear a lot of quotes this season because he's my all-time fave. This one from the beautiful Sunday in the Park with George, and it is this: so many possibilities. That feels very apt for this season of hope in the beginning of the baseball season before the games count and when everything's optimistic. And also just more obviously, in the bullpen. Guys, there are so many possibilities, I can't even narrow it down. So hopefully that helped you understand what the options are. I'm not sure I understand what they are, but together we'll figure it out. The Yankees will make choices, and we'll talk about them on a future episode. Until then, go Yanks.